Haunted by vengeance, the ghosts of Methlehem, and the blood-stained streets of Spokane. I lived in Spokane in the early 2000s, where I became a murderer. It wasn't entirely my fault, but I accept responsibility. Fear drove my actions, as I was haunted by a specter of vengeance, a ghost that would not let me rest until I had slit enough throats. Defying her was not an option. She tormented me and withered my very soul if I resisted. The feeling of having your soul seep into the mouth of a ghost, its bloody eyes holding you in place as your essence pours like golden smoke into endless suffering, is indescribable. I succumbed to the terror, obeying the ghost that was once my friend. In life, she was kind, but in death, she became a wraith. She had asked me if I believed in ghosts, as if she knew she wouldn't survive the weekend. I thought she was going with her boyfriend, Daniel, but he didn't join her. Instead, she went alone, abandoned by her girlfriends when she collapsed at Aaron's party. The guys there told them they could leave without her, so they did. She didn't survive. Daniel called me asking if she was with me. I told him where she had gone, and he said he was in front of my shack. A cold chill ran through me because I knew she was dead. You just know when someone you love dies a bad death. We found her tied naked to an old mattress in an abandoned house, covered in bruises, a beer bottle still in her. She wasn't breathing. The police shelved the case as the guys at the party were under investigation for meth distribution. They wouldn't let her murder interfere with their bigger investigation. Daniel ended up in the hospital for alcohol poisoning and didn't make it. Left with no friends in the city of Methlehem, I was consumed by rage. Her ghost haunted me, telling me how she suffered before dying, feeding on my fear. She had loved Daniel and me, and in her eyes we were all dead. I feared becoming a monster, but everything I did only made me worse. By the end, I was addicted to murder, driven by my need to hunt down the men responsible. An ordinary murderer isn't addicted, just obsessed. Allow me to explain how to murder a group of men in cold blood and get away with it. The police knew me. I got arrested often. They'd parade me through the station, but I was always out of county lockup by Tuesday. Charges dropped. I first targeted a man who returned to the scene of the crime, sitting on the porch where we found her. With a claw hammer in hand, I approached. He pulled a gun but forgot to take off the safety. I drove the claw into his wrist, pried the gun from his hands, and dropped the bullets onto the porch. "We won't need those. I'm going to kill you slowly," I told him. He screamed for help, then collapsed, begging me to take his money and let him go. "Eat that bottle," I said, handing him an empty beer bottle. He refused, so I stomped on him until he was a whimpering mess. I then asked him about his friends. He gave me names and addresses, and I spared him. But when his phone rang and Aaron was on the other end, I knew it wasn't over. I answered the call and hung up. When Aaron and another guy arrived, I shot the passenger in the nose and Aaron in the neck and head. Then I dragged Aaron into the street, tied his foot to the bumper, and lit him on fire. He was dragged for 3/4 of a mile before dying in agony. Over the next days, I called Spider's associates one by one, offering them a deal on his stuff. They'd come alone or with a friend, and I'd cripple them, skin them alive, and toss their bodies into the empty pool out back. I became addicted, drinking their blood as I butchered them. But eventually, there was no one left to call. I had other phones, but word had spread that the freak house was a slaughterhouse. Nobody wanted Spider's stuff anymore. The thirst for blood consumed me until I became hollow, invisible, an empty shell, a husk of who I once was. Then, she came to me. She looked different, like when I first met her, gothic and 16 years old. She used to visit my shack, make coffee, and tell me stories. I loved her dearly. "I am sorry," she told me, and then she was gone. I wept, cleansing tears washing away the horror. I felt whole again, though all alone. I missed my friends. I called Pearsons and Sons, Gravel and Yard, and told them I had a pool full of dead meth dealers who I had tortured and murdered because they killed a girl. They filled the pool with gravel, paved it over, and put a swing set on top. I checked into the drunk tank, stayed for 5 days, and became human again. The vampiric thirst diminished, and I confessed to a score of murders while delirious. I had to leave Methlehem and return to where it rains. I moved to Seattle. As I was leaving, Officer Van Dame pulled me over. He wasn't a traffic cop. He just stood there, blinked at me, and took the phone. Without another word, he drove off, leaving me there. I never looked back at that city.